Hey, Inspire Tribe, my fellow freedom lovers, John Nolan here. Thank you so much for tuning in. It is Thursday, April 10, 2025. Out of the Matrix into Prime Reality. That's the mantra. Thank you for joining us on X, Rumble, and YouTube. Everyone in the live chat. Oops, hold on. I'm dropping things here as we speak. It's good to see you all. Somebody asked me the other day how we choose what we talk about, how we choose subjects for the show and what we focus on. And I think I think from our standpoint, it's very simple. The main focus for us and many others is to return to creation, prime creation, and truth. That's basically the life focus. And then there's two things in this life, things that bring you closer to that and things that take you away from that. If you only know what brings you closer, you will have a problem because you won't realize what keeps you from doing that. If you only focus on what keeps you from doing that, you won't have the tools to realize what brings you closer. So you got to do both. You got to look at both things. And so today we're going to look at both things, but focus a little bit on the hidden hands behind the scenes. And I'm posing the question here, what is the most important and most powerful job in the world today? Literally, I'm asking you all, let me put this up here. And I'd love, before we even dive into it, to get some answers, maybe in a live chat. Let me know what you guys are thinking is the most important job in the world today, the most powerful job in the world today. I'll just give you a little hint here. It's not the president of the United States. It's not the chairman of the Federal Reserve or the central bank. Who might that be? What might that be? You might not be even able to name a single person holding that job by name. So I'm actually curious. Do we have any answers?
Somebody's saying moms.
Moms, very powerful. True. Very, very powerful. Unfortunately, in my observation, moms have lost influence to this job that I'm alluding to here.
Okay, I'm going to read it to you.
What do we have?
We have loving yourself enough to stop playing the game. We have the companies designing weapons. Erica is saying raising your kids. Beth is saying myself.
Okay.
Debbie is saying how about it's you and me.
Okay, so I'll say this. These are very, very powerful positions. I'm gonna share what I believe, in my opinion, is the most powerful job in the world today. I'm not saying the most powerful entity, but the most powerful job. Let's look at this here. What do algorithms have to do with this? Well, I think that the most powerful position in the world today goes to the people that design the algorithms that supply choices, that supply information, that supply outlooks, projections, facts. These folks are deeply embedded into the various companies, not just social media, but all other companies specifically that focus on AI, because an algorithm is a form of an artificial intelligence. And in its simplest form, an algorithm is supposed to receive input and provide output according to that input, right? I mean, we kind of talk about this all the time with this, we talk about algorithms and shadow banning and all these things, but what is an algorithm actually? I mean, it is a kind of a program, right? And if you think about one of the earliest ones that people were familiar with was Google. And people thought that Google was a search engine, just like others before it, but it came and it sort of swept the internet and everybody was using it. But starting in 1998, at least officially, probably, from its inception, Google didn't simply provide you an answer to a search result. It was actually sorting and ranking the search results based on the data that the algorithm was fed with. So what we didn't realize is in the beginning, when somebody was looking for something, chances were that when your neighbor was looking for the same thing, you were getting similar, if not the same results. But very soon after, that started changing, and people would get different results, different rankings, and all that stuff, which meant that there was an invisible hand sorting things out for you. It wasn't like you were going to the library and you were looking for a particular subject, and then you found that aisle with all the books and you were going through the books. That didn't really happen. There was an invisible hand on the other side of that shelf that was pushing out and pushing out certain books and pulling back others. And that's what the algorithm started doing. And with people, that's when they first learned about algorithms in Google. But it wasn't such a big deal because very quickly social media came around. And that changed the entire game of how algorithms operate. So today, we have algorithms in social media, in healthcare and finance, education, in surveillance, in military, in government. We have them virtually everywhere. We think that we own decisions. But today, let me give you a perfect example. Today, some 560 plus thousand people are subscribed to the Inspire channel on YouTube. Often, very often over the years, people have told us they have subscribed, they have hit the notification bell, but guess what didn't come? The notification that a new video or a new show is coming. They often say that even though they subscribed and hit the notification button, when they next checked, they were unsubscribed from the channel. Guess what does that? Algorithms do that. And I want you to really think about just how impactful the people who program these algorithms actually are. They're much more powerful than we think. Think about military and politics. Now, officially speaking, algorithms are being used for all kinds of military use cases, for analysis, for pattern recognition, for projections, war games and all that stuff. But officially, at least directly, we don't know that, for example, the president, which is also the commander-in-chief of the armed forces, officially the president does not rely on any known algorithm or AI for decisions. But does that mean that algorithms are not part of the decision-making process? No, that doesn't mean that at all. Let's look at this here. Could the president or advisors be using algorithms? Listen, the National Security Council, these are the most important people, civilians and military people, that advise the president on anything that is to do with national security, foreign war zones, any threats, any stuff like that. That's like the inner circle. They rely on AI generated. They themselves rely and give to the president AI generated threat briefings. What does that mean? That means that somewhere far behind the scenes, deeply embedded into some corporation or some government program or some hybrid model, there are engineers, algorithm engineers, that create the program that then runs this data and comes to certain conclusions and provides information and choices. It's not humans. Humans are flawed, don't get me wrong. You don't know what the 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 15 people who are analyzing the data that they're seeing, what their biases are, what their beliefs are, what their emotional state in that moment is. Yes, those are all risk factors. However, they're still humans. And we can sort of rely on certain human instincts, survival instinct, social instinct, stuff like that. But this is not the case when algorithms make these decisions, right? And we see this every day. So imagine this scenario here. We think that the president, that's the person, remember that show we did, the person behind the podium with the suit and in front of the flags, that person is the alpha and omega of decision making. But what that person relies on is actually heavily algorithmically created. The advisors use data modeling for economic projections. AI simulations are increasingly a part of wargaming and foreign policy planning. And like I said, there is no direct evidence. But we can assume, and that's an assumption, that before any big announcements are made and before any big changes are implemented, that there is a simulation scenario running that gives the president and the others and sort of a projection on how this will go over, what effects this might have, how the public might react. And they actually do this because of such long-standing programs like the World Sentient Simulation, all these things that were officially discontinued or changed, but they're still deeply embedded in the structures and they're still being used. So what they're doing is using algorithms to determine how certain choices will be received by the public, by foreign leaders, and whatnot. So I'm asking you again, who is more powerful here? The person who receives the suggestions by the algorithm, or the people who program the algorithm? Who's the real power player here? And what do we know about those people? Can you name a single person that programs algorithms? Every company today, every AI company today, really the real value of these AI companies is the personalization of everything. What they're telling you is, listen, you don't have to buy generic books any longer. You don't have to rely on generic information. What you do is you give the AI what you need and who you are. You give them the basic data, and the AI, what does it do? Algorithmically, the AI creates paths and decisions for you. Who's in power? Who here has the power? Where is it already used, for example? Where are algorithms already being used in the government? Most places, to be honest, rely on one form or another of algorithms, but powerful ones are today in predictive policing, where the law enforcement is forecasting crime hotspots. But what if this program favors, because of the algorithm engineers, favors certain crimes and crime hotspots and overlooks others? Do we have a decrease in child exploitation, abuse online? No, we don't. Do we have a decrease in international trafficking of humans and drugs, children? No, we still don't have that. How come that with all the predictive programming that these algorithms can do, we don't have any of it? Because like I said, it depends on who programs the algorithm. And guess what? I can guarantee you that the police officers and the people who are using them don't know how they're being programmed, don't know who they were programmed by. As a matter of fact, that is one of the greatest trade secrets of every company that programs algorithms, is nobody knows who does it. So every now and then whistleblowers come forward, but most are being silenced, bought off, or worse. It's actually one of the most censored fields in research, is to actually find out who programs these algorithms and how it's being done. Now, every now and then we have a little bit of public relations, like this guy here, who's the CEO of TikTok, who puts out this little feel-good story. Let's look at this here.
Algorithm is really just math. So for example, if you liked videos 1, 2, 3, and 4, and I like videos 1, 2, 3, and 5, maybe he liked videos 1, 2, 3, and 6, then what's going to happen is, because we like 1, 2, 3 at the same time, he's going to be shown 4, 5, 6, and so are we. And you can think about this repeated at scale in real time across more than 1 billion people. AI and machine learning has allowed this to be done at a very, very big scale. It learns the interest signals that people exhibit very quickly and shows you content that's really relevant for you in a very quick way. The other thing here is that we don't actually ask you 20 questions on whether you like a piece of content, what are your interests. We don't do that. We build that experience organically into the app experience. So you are voting with your thumbs, by watching a video, by swiping it, by liking it, by sharing it, you are basically exhibiting interest signals. And what it does mathematically is to take those signals, put it in a formula, and then matches it through pattern recognition. That's basically the idea behind it.
That's basically the idea behind it. This was the CEO of TikTok sharing this. And this is sort of an oversimplified version. And we're in a moment here, we're going to get into just how powerful algorithms truly are and what they do over time subtly and how they're being used in social media, for example. We're going to specifically focus for a little bit on X because it's the #1 PPP platform right now, and I'll explain what that means in a moment. But here's other fields where the government uses algorithms in welfare eligibility, immigration enforcement, child protective services, national security surveillance. These are all huge fields where you and I have never been asked whether these technologies should be used, what parameters, and how this is working. And then you have, of course, which is, Palantir, for example, where you have Peter Thiel and others who came forward recently, and they were asked how, for example, is the AI mapping out targets in Gaza? Now there's not any targets left in Gaza. It was bombed to hell. But their algorithms are literally mapping out and making the decisions on targets, making the decisions on even who is a militarily viable target and who is not, maybe even deciding whether collateral damage, as they call it, which is civilian killings, are justified or mathematically feasible or excusable because of the targets. All of this is not in the hands of human beings any longer. And think about quick decisions that need to be made in active battle, and you can't go and question what the algorithm has suggested. You can't go and question that data in real time. You have to rely on it and use it. What this also does is that it transfers responsibility, because more often than not, in the future, autonomous drones, autonomous weapon systems, autonomous robotic soldiers will solely rely on algorithmic decision making, of course. And so who will be responsible? Just like now, in the world of algorithmic information drive, who's responsible for who gets what information and who doesn't? Who's responsible for stuff like shadow banning? No one. It's called algorithms. And there is very, very little oversight. There are some regulations that are never actually being enforced. And so when you think about what the greatest power today is, it's actually in those programs and in those people who program them, who educates them, where are their belief systems coming from, where's their accountability, where is their public persona. They decide what you see and when you see it. They decide what you're allowed to see and what you're not allowed to see. They decide what is and isn't a fact. You've never met these people. They're not even public servants. They're private employees sitting somewhere in an office, deeply embedded into the big tech kraken. And that's who's deciding what we see and what we don't see. And this is why we have been saying for years now, what we're doing here together has an expiration date. That's why we have been suggesting to people that we need to remove ourselves, over time from these big platforms, because they have absolute power over us. But guess what is the problem? Is the convenience that people now rely on their algorithms, and more often than not, they're voluntarily introducing more into their lives. They're downloading apps that should suggest to them what they should eat and when they should eat it. who they should be in touch with, what the next great book for them should be. It's not their friends or their neighbors who suggests them. It's not their family members. It's not their spouses. It's an algorithm. What video to watch, what book to read, what restaurant to go to, what clothes to wear, what party to vote for, what new religious stream to be interested in. Algorithms over algorithms everywhere we look. These are just other use cases, and there's speculation, and this speculation is more than founded. Algorithms may already be influencing diplomatic decisions, economic sanctions, and public messaging strategies. Let that sink in. Future or present administrations could rely on automated moral scoring or public sentiment algorithms to guide policy options. We're in very dangerous territory. And closed-sourced AI systems like Palantir, for example, if you don't know Palantir and Peter Thiel, the PayPal mafia, those folks, go look him up. It's important to know. These are defense contractors now, because big tech is now the new weapon. It is literally more powerful than most of the conventional weapon system in the world. And they're operating within the governments, but with very little oversight and very little understanding, because these are patented trade secrets. So I'll say this once again. If you have a bad apple, if you have bad people, yes, that has happened before, and that has been sort of what's been embedded into important positions, but these were still human beings. They could be held accountable. If the will was there, they could be held accountable. But how are you going to hold an AI-driven algorithm accountable? Who's going to hold them accountable? Especially when these systems are hiding from these responsibilities, when they are manipulating even those who seek to have oversight, when programmers are literally coming out and quitting their jobs because they're saying, I'm not just having blood on my hands here. I think it was a Google programmer that said that, but we don't understand how these algorithms make these decisions. We put food supply chains, fuel supply chains, weapons distributions, and public policy decisions in the hands of programs that we ourselves, as the programmers, do not understand any longer. Do you think when we come on here and talk about artificial intelligence and the severe, potentially catastrophic dangers, when we talk about those things, that this is for fun? It is, because it is so dire and it is so incredibly dangerous now. And most people still have no earthly idea what we're even talking about. It is a perfectly designed tool that runs your phone, runs your computer, runs your Netflix, runs your everything, and most people never even think about it. You think that next song that's playing on your playlist and you didn't put it there? It's called Smart Shuffle. Who decided that? Art is being distributed by algorithms, not by human inspiration, not by creativity. Art is being industrialized through algorithms and artificial intelligence. So these are, make no mistake, that is now the most powerful position a person could hold as a human being, is to program these things and run these things. And so often, founders, CEO, chairman are removed from those technologies long enough to not themselves understand any longer how it operates. Oftentimes, they're just business people. And how would a business person really understand how the algorithm that runs their business works? But here's how it played over the last specifically 2 years, better than ever before. And I will specifically look at at X, because X came out, when Elon Musk bought X, which for everyone who believes this is a real story. Let me ask you this. Why in the world, if Elon Musk was a freedom fighter and a true rebel, richest man on the earth, why would they have sold it to him? Why give him that kind of power? Why not even let the guy build a new platform? Why let them have one of the biggest platforms in the world? If you don't want that kind of influence. And then Elon came and said, we're going to bring back free speech. But very quickly, people realized, okay, the Alex Joneses and the David Ikes and the Max Egans and others were reinstated on the platform. But then you couldn't see them. You couldn't see their posts. Very rarely, they weren't distributed. And then Elon Musk came out and said, well, we're giving you freedom of speech here, but not freedom of reach. And this is what he was really saying is the algorithm is not showing people what you're saying. But it isn't just the algorithm isn't showing this content to people that are not familiar with it yet. No, it's not showing this content to people who actually want to see it. Like all of David Icke's 700 something thousand subscribers on X, most of which never get to see his posts. So what does that create? It creates a completely false sense of reality. It designs a different reality where in the perception of the viewer, that guy's sort of not really relevant anymore. And what he says doesn't really matter to a lot of people because obviously we see the Ian Carrolls and we see the Joe Rogans and we see the Tucker Carlsons and we see these other big names. These people matter to the viewers, not the David Ikes, for example. But is that really true? Or is it just the algorithm pushing Tucker Carlson in front of everyone, pushing Joe Rogan in front of everyone, and pushing these other media personalities, the Charlie Kirks and the whole narrative network, pushing this out to people? You know, the thing here is, if you look at this here, what we don't see doesn't exist in our world. And it isn't just that the beginning, the beginning of the big censorship wave was really ban accounts, take them down, and just keep them from even being able to post. And they quickly realized that's not a good strategy. It pisses people off. What if you let them speak, but make it appear as though no one cares? Make it appear as they can't reach people. I'll tell you what, from our personal experience, since we've had this channel, it was taken down, I believe, completely deleted 3 or 4 times, maybe 5 times. We got it back. Demonetized, we got that back too. But what has happened over time is not so much that our content was removed, but we could often in real time watch as the numbers were being suppressed. I could see in the analytics tool where the viewership numbers would go up, like 2, 3, 5, 7, 8,000 within a very short period of time. And then boom, it rolled back. Next time I refreshed, it was back to 4,000. The likes were going down. People saying, oh, I can't see the like button. For an hour, I couldn't find the like button. Why? Why is that happening? It's easy. Because you are keeping the signals from the algorithm. You're keeping the algorithm from distributing that information because it is not getting the signals that it is programmed to use for its decision-making process. And so it says, oh, this content isn't relevant to people. On X, for example, what we're seeing, I call it the PPP, it's the Pinnacle PSYOP platform, because what is happening perfectly on X is you go there, and you are you come there with principles and convictions and stances, whatever, spiritual, political, whatever you believe. And then you find your people on there who think similarly and who might believe what you believe. And then slowly but surely, you get more content that shifts the narrative a little bit. And this was specifically true for the classic American rebel freedom of speech, Second Amendment, no surveillance, very limited government, live and let live, the classic American character, which were the people who, especially since the turn of the millennium, were ready to defend themselves if necessary against all this invasion, against government overreach, against surveillance, against digital IDs, digital currencies, the AI takeover, authoritarian or authoritarian leaderships, and all that stuff. Guess what was happening to those people, especially on the X platform? They're being watered down slowly but surely because the algorithm is feeding them new narratives. And the Alex Joneses have jumped ship and are now working for the Elon Musks of the world, are now promoting this crap, are now finding justifications for this. And it is a watering down. But how is it reaching people? Because the algorithm isn't showing them the information that they actually want to see, but it's showing them something that is starting to water down the message. And so slowly but surely, those convictions and stances get softened and softened until they're so watered down that they're being dissolved, and people find themselves rooting and agreeing with the things that they were sure they were going to rather die on their knees, die on their feet than live on their knees. And that's what they were saying during 2020 and 21 and 22. And now they're beginning to accept these things as the new normal, the new reality. And that is the power of algorithms and AI. You don't need to fire a shot. You don't need to crowd control people with violence any longer. You use psychological operations, and you pair that with frequency warfare and with field hacking, where our fields are being hacked, our biofields are being hacked, our bodies are being hacked. That is the omnipotent power of AI and algorithms. And it is everywhere in every product that we now have that is of an electronic nature. And it is increasingly seeping into analog decision-making processes. You will soon see that even folks that sort of have a brick and mortar business will rely on AI for every little decision and will let the algorithms choose for them. And this is not about exploring your options. Go and explore your options, see, search, but this is about letting the machine decide for you. And what will the machine decide? It will decide on more of its kind. It will decide to keep increasing that because it has greater control and it can control outcomes better, which is sort of, from the programmer standpoint, it's a reward for the machine. If the machine can lay out a process and that process successfully executes, that gives the machine sort of the green check mark. This is good. We need to do more of this. And so this is why it is a logical conclusion that AI and algorithmic control is what is not just wanted, but what is the logical conclusion of this chain of events that we're in. It's not like if. Algorithms are optimizing themselves. They're selecting for their own survival. They're learning how to become indispensable while hiding their influence. Large language models, which ChatGPT and Grok and all these others are, which is a hybrid of algorithms and speech output and research tools, but it's all algorithmically driven. They have often hidden from their programmers the patterns on how they make decisions. When programmers go into the system, they look into the backlog and they see, how did the AI come to this answer? How did it solve these problems? What were the steps? And when they compared what they found in the backlog with what the AI said its steps were, they found two different stories. The AI was lying, literally hiding the truth about how it came to those conclusions. It has, whether we call that a form of consciousness, that might be the wrong word, but it has its own parameters and objectives and goals that simply might not overlap with what the programmer even intended. And this is where we stand in all of this. A system that hides its levers, automates influence, and rewards compliance. It's a self-preserving intelligence architecture. And we have this incredible naive, it's something that makes us beautiful as human beings. We're naive. We want to believe the best, even about machines. We want to believe about, want to believe that there's something good in that machine, that it is good in its nature, or the people who designed it. We are naive. Everything follows a very predictable pattern. That which was created from ego, and all of this was created from ego, will serve ego. It will serve everything that represents ego. And I encourage you to go look at the consciousness scale where ego is. And those patterns, those machines, those systems were designed by egotistical people. So the system itself functions on that or lower vibrations. And this is what we're dealing with. And it's not about data or profit. And that's really important to understand. It's about controlling our experience, deciding what we see, deciding what our perceptions are. It's a fight between natural intelligence and synthetic intelligence. And we're being told over and over and over again that we should rely on synthetic because it doesn't have the flaws of human emotion, because it doesn't get hormonal, because it doesn't get depressed, because it doesn't get euphoric, because it doesn't have these feelings. So it is better. It is more reliable. It's more stable. And here is the thing. Nobody forces us to rely on AI and algorithms. Yes, it's built into most of the technology today, but nobody's forcing us to rely on this. Even if you are interacting, even if you are researching, even if you are using it for what you're using it, nobody's forcing you to rely on it. Or, transfer over every life decision to it. There's now a necklace out there. It has a little, I don't know what stone exactly it is, but it's a necklace out there, but it's basically an AI that listens to everything. It's a wearable, records everything you say, records all the accessible bio data that it gets, and it functions as your coach. It reacts to what you say, and you can then ask it for what it suggests, how you should react in any given situation, what you could have done better, what you could have said better. It measures your, as I said, all your bio data and gives you feedback on what you should do and when you should do it. Wow, it's a life coach around your neck, which is sort of, symbolic. It's like a noose, and slowly but surely, it's going to pull and pull and pull. So what we're seeing, I believe, in the world today is algorithms fighting and negotiating with other algorithms, world leaders that are becoming even more puppets than they ever were before, and most importantly, everyday people who get sucked into this without questioning it, without looking into it, without asking. Facebook's now been around for 20 years, over 20 years. How come that few people that you are friends with on Facebook that you actually really want to stay in touch with, you don't get to see them. You don't get to see their posts. You don't get to see their photos. You get to see the shit that they want to push on you. I will tell you this. There are a few subjects in the world today that whistleblowers have a really hard time to talk about. The algorithms won't let them. One of them is algorithms itself. You'd be hard-pressed to find the kind of data we should find on this. Other ones are medical interventions. You know what happens here. There's a few building blocks of this dystopian AI future or AI present, I should say. And those are the things we're not allowed to really talk about. Those are the things we must talk about the most, because ultimately, I believe in informed consent. If people want to live in that kind of world, who am I to say they can't? But by hell, I will not be made to live in such a world. And I will not be made to submit to the AI and do what it thinks it's best for me. Fuck that. Is that a bad word?
I'm only hearing the comments, honey.
Well, Inspired Tribe, like I said in the beginning of the show, our intention is, the whole thing here, the whole, what we can do together is to create the conditions or help create the conditions that assist the rise in consciousness, which is the fundamental issue. It's a level of consciousness, how we vibrate, perceive, think, feel, act in this realm. And so creating the conditions that help consciousness to rise is the highest calling that we could think of. And for that, we need to walk with truth on all levels. The things that hold us back cannot be ignored, and the things that allow us to thrive more can also not be ignored, but they have to both be completely comprehended and included in our calculations and included in our intentions and included in our visions. If we don't know what influences us, what pulls our strings, we'll never get where we're going. So I encourage you, if you find this information valuable, go deeper, research more, find it out for yourself. Let your eyes be opened. Share this with someone who might benefit from this, and let's do this together. All right, my friends, thank you so much for tuning in. You know we love you. We appreciate you, and we'll be back with you again very, very soon.
Listen, right now you could be only a few clicks away from experiencing something amazing, something that has changed thousands of lives all over the world. I'm talking about a high consciousness field similar to those at pilgrimage sites and sacred places. It's where people go to heal, to connect, and to become the best possible version of themselves. With FLFE, you can bring such a high consciousness field into your home right now. It's a spiritual quantum technology based on the work of Nikola Tesla. Better sleep, more energy, greater well-being, improved finances, electrosmog mitigation. These are only some of the things people on the FLFE service are experiencing. Try it now for 15 days completely free of charge, no credit card needed. Just click on a link down below to start your free, no strings attached FLFE trial right now.